Okay, before I start this video off, let me just say this. I am not an MCU hater. I've been a fan of the MCU since all the way back in the day when Iron Man first exploded into the box office and started the damn franchise, and that was all the way back in 2008. 2008! 14 years ago. That's how long this once awesome, though now a soulless corporate trash fire of a franchise has been running, which is still being ejaculated from the loins of one of the 21st century's greatest creative hacks, Kevin Fuckwit Feige. Many people have recognized this and have dropped off from watching the MCU anymore or indulging any of its new releases, but a sizable chunk of its fans remain. To be honest, despite the decline of the MCU, I still considered myself to be among its collective of fans until quite recently, in fact, when I came to a realization. And that realization is this. See, Doctor Strange 2 is coming out in a couple of weeks, and honestly, I couldn't care less if I tried. It recently hit me like a bolt of lightning that I've barely, if at all, even thought about the upcoming MCU movie in the past 2 months. The last time I paid any kind of attention was when we discussed the movie's controversial leaks on the channel's podcast a number of months ago. Which, speaking of Marvel leaks, I'll get back to them later on because they're also a big reason why I can't continue to indulge this franchise anymore, as well as the insufferable culture surrounding it. But see, I just kind of woke up to the fact that aside from Spider-Man No Way Home, I haven't seen or cared to watch any of the MCU films or television series in the timeline since after Spider-Man Far From Home, which came out all the way back in 2019. I have seen Black Widow, I even made a video about it, but I consider that an exception since despite its date of release, chronologically it takes place in what's referred to as the Infinity Saga, which despite its ups and downs is exactly where the MCU should have ended and where the franchise undoubtedly peaked. Basically, aside from the Spider-Man movies, which is one of my personal favorite comic book IPs, I haven't seen WandaVision, I haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Eternals, Shang-Chi, and certainly not Moon Knight. And oh wait, I forgot that fucking Hawkeye was a thing as well. And nope, I haven't seen it. I only know that they ruined Wilson Fisk. Thanks, Feige. I'm sure you were real butthurt that Netflix made a better Marvel villain than 95% of the trash you've churned out over the course of a decade. But the point I'm getting to is this. Doctor Strange 2 is coming out, and I'm expected to watch all this crap in order to get it? I haven't watched any of them. And plenty of other MCU fans, current or former, haven't watched them either. Because they don't care. They're apathetic. Because they know the franchise has already peaked and now it's crumbling, which is the real reason why not only are a large portion of people not bothering with the Marvel shows on Disney+, but it's also why every Marvel theatrical release, aside from Spider-Man, since late 2019 has done abysmal at the box office, at least by the supposed billion-dollar standard Marvel, or at least Marvel's sycophants that rewatch it on loop, have set for it. But make no mistake, interest has plummeted, and so has the MCU's quality. Realistically speaking, the MCU's assets, what remains, what is left, is quite honestly pathetic at this point, which has led Feige and his team of hacks to a new strategy and another avenue to avoid the slightest bit of creativity in their line of work. See, make no mistake, the only reason most people above the average norm of MCU fans went to see Spider-Man No Way Home, aside from the fact that Spider-Man the IP is enormously popular, that movie's ridiculously undeserved box office numbers is because of the MCU's shameless theft of assets from other Spider-Man movies that had nothing to do with the MCU. The MCU was in fact the least memorable part of its latest blockbuster that was helmed by a different company entirely, since they don't own the movie rights to Spider-Man. Sony does, and everyone showed up to see some fan-favorite familiar faces reprise their roles, and that's it. One of the highest-grossing movies to date in the MCU achieved that feat by one of the most shameless means possible, and now it seems Doctor Strange is attempting to do the exact same thing. But seeing as this is a film completely helmed by Kevin Feige and not tempered by Sony like No Way Home was, it's going to attempt to do what No Way Home did to an even greater degree, but to miserable effect. And because people indulged No Way Home and its bullshit to such an insane degree, congratulations! You have now set yet the latest in terrible Marvel movie trend. You have told Dickhead Feige and the rest of the Marvel executives they don't have to write good movies anymore. Hell, they don't even have to produce good trailers anymore. They just gotta throw out some cameo bait, and that will be enough to lure a sizable portion of dumb fucks into the cinemas, enough to make their money back. It's the very reason why Doctor Strange is going through so many last-minute reshoots, and you can expect the same for every single MCU project going forward. So way to go, Planet Earth! If you thought the MCU was a soulless pile of hollow shit before, it's about to get a lot worse.
So it begins. films.
Despite this trend that's about to become the norm for the MCU, and the sycophantic masses will undoubtedly welcome it with open arms, let's be real here, aside from Doctor Strange 2, what is this aimless clusterfuck of a once excellent franchise got left to offer us? Thor Love and Thunder? Black Panther 2 after Chadwick Boseman's tragic death? She-Hulk? Seriously, the fact that people still pretend this franchise is at the top of its game is absolutely baffling to me. Is it denial, perhaps? Or is it just straight up delusion? And this brings me to another reason for the MCU's decline and why I'm done with it, and that's the culture surrounding it. It's gotten to the point where Marvel doesn't even have to market its shitty films anymore, despite the decline in overall viewer interest and the plummeting quality of the movies themselves. This shitfuck of a company has fostered one of the most insufferable cults I've ever seen. In addition to that, you have mass amounts of influencers churning out fake news, leaks, rumors, etc., which can be summed up like this. What if this person shows up? Cue the absolute fucking mass fandom hysteria in the comment sections. All over social media. This goes beyond simple fandom. This is what I've come to call theory culture, and a bunch of shameless tards who throw everything at the internet about an upcoming movie or product to see what sticks in order to try and light a powder keg that hangs off every word waiting to explode. Sure, I'd say that every fandom has this to some extent, but Marvel's is on a whole nother level of insufferable, and that's all because of these goddamn algorithms. Which is why, despite my best efforts, I had to listen to a whole year and a half of bullshit hype and speculation surrounding Spider-Man No Way Home. Sure, I did somewhat contribute to that, but only sparingly, as I did some trailer breakdowns and videos in the lead up to the film's release. But aside from that, I avoided these theory cultists like the fucking plague. And every fucking day on my feed, it was just Spider-Man No Way Home, Topher Grace, Venom appearing, Sandman is from an alternate timeline, Dr. Octopus is actually a clone, Doctor Strange is turning evil, Tom Hardy is the real villain, etc., just non-fucking stop bullshit theories based on nothing but a piss weak he said, she said from some nobody who cooked it up. Because 90% of the time, it wasn't the Marvel executives or cast and crew saying this stuff, it was fan media and the worst of mainstream YouTube spouting this crap. And because do not recommend is no match for the almighty algorithm on YouTube, we had no choice short of going cold turkey from the fucking internet from avoiding this crap. Marvel and Sony didn't sell No Way Home. They put out a couple of leaks and some trailer bait, but it was the fans that did the rest. The fans sold this movie to the fans. And Marvel barely had to lift a fucking finger. Theory after rumor after fake news, all for the grand total of who fucking gives a shit. And this has become so rampantly popular among this vast niche of sycophants that it's become prevalent for Marvel's B movies as well, like Doctor Strange for instance, because yes, Doctor Strange is a B-tier Marvel character, especially in the MCU, and especially after No Way Home where his character was practically fucking ruined. And now, bafflingly, the sycophants are trying to do the same thing with Thor Love and Thunder, who, despite the character's popularity, has only had movies ranging from bad to mediocre. Ragnarok is very much included in the bad category, just for your information. Seriously, fuck Taika Waititi. Congrats on making Thor a complete fucking joke, and thank Christ Infinity War was right around the corner to show the stark difference in quality character writing for Thor, because Ragnarok had nothing on Infinity War. And when Taika Waititi, that overrated hack piece of shit, is done ruining Thor, he's running off to pour more dirt on Star Wars' grave. Great! Can't wait for that! But back on point, after all the theories and the rumors and the fucking bullshit surrounding Spider-Man No Way Home were all said and done, what exactly were we treated to? A bloated, nostalgia bait, fan service orgy fest that was so contrived and sloppily written it was impossible to take seriously, and ultimately, not to mention, butchered Doctor Strange right before his very own fucking movie that many stans are supposedly still excited for. No Way Home sucked. It had only a few decent moments, sure, but the quality as a whole was a joke, and once again, leave it to theory culture and fandom pandering to offer some of the most pathetic mental gymnastics I've ever seen to justify that movie's shitty fucking writing. Because who cares about that when the babies get their fucking bottle? It's all about the cameos now. The cameos are what fucking matter. I don't want to stray too far off topic. If you want a more nuanced look at why No Way Home is terrible, there's a link to my video in the description. But my point is this, all that mass hysteria, theory baiting bullshit surrounding the movie didn't change the inevitable garbage product that we received, and despite that, No Way Home, thanks to the brainlets who ate that shit up, but this time on overdrive, turned No Way Home into the most overrated Marvel movie of all time. MCU or otherwise. Congratulations, Spider-Verse, you no longer hold that title. But it's important to note, this decline in quality and overexposure the MCU is experiencing isn't solely limited to it. An excellent comparison would be another series that I was once a diehard fan for that completely went down the shitter, and that would be the Fast and Furious franchise. A series that had its haters like the MCU from day one for being a movie series about street racing and pushing the bounds of believability with speed, but see, that was just what made it different. Because at its core, Fast and Furious was an action crime drama just like any other. We didn't care that it placed an emphasis on street racing because guess what? That's what we fucking liked about it in the first place. But that's another tangent. Point I'm getting at is, despite its detractors, the franchise persevered right up until its fifth installment where it decided to change up its formula and stray away from the niche, becoming something akin to a Mission Impossible ripoff. But it was still great, at least for a while, because the story and characters still had momentum to build off, and not to mention there were plot threads yet to be wrapped up. But then tragedy struck in the lead up to the seventh and presumably final installment of the series at the time, when Paul Walker, the main protagonist for the entire series, tragically died. Paul Walker and Vin Diesel started the series, and by God, the fans wanted them to finish it together. Which is why the ending to Fast and Furious 7 was so highly well regarded, because it felt like the end. All the plot points were wrapped up. The series had peaked. Paul Walker was given a heartfelt goodbye that was so touching it made grown men feel their hearts shatter. I'd equate this to the end of Avengers Endgame and the death of Tony Stark and the retirement of Steve Rogers. Both characters were undoubtedly the leads of the MCU, and Endgame was the last movie for both of them. At least as far as we know. Remember, it's Marvel we're talking about. They'll be bullshitted back to life somehow, and Stans will still gobble it up. But back on point, regardless of how you feel about Endgame, the movie was undoubtedly the climax of the MCU. All the plot points were wrapped up, the big bad was vanquished, and that should have been the end, right there and then. But was it? No! Just like the Fast and Furious franchise, it refused to die gracefully and has limped on terribly ever since, getting progressively worse and worse, and in the case of the Fast and Furious, despite its box office revenues, fans have finally, especially with its latest release, reached their breaking point, refusing to indulge its bullshit any longer. Because Fast 9 was received terribly, because those movies get progressively worse and rely on their audience, praying for them to be as dumb and accepting as humanly possible. You know, it's funny because I've heard similar excuses for the Fast franchises I've heard for the MCU. Comic book movies are meant to be dumb fun. Movies about cars and street racing are meant to be dumb fun. And my personal favorite, these movies were always meant to be stupid. Bull fucking shit. That's a crutch to deny the fact that what you love has become garbage because you don't want to accept it, because you can't help indulging it, because you're a slave to it. The very reason why people get angry at this stuff in the first place is because of the decline of franchises like the MCU and the Fast franchise. The reason they get angry is because they started out great and they turned into garbage. Now, to be clear, if I haven't made it already, I do respect the fact that the franchise still has its fans. That's not what sickens me. It's the sycophants that are keeping it on life support. To sum it up, I'm just going to use my recent community post. When I say sycophants, I mean Marvel stans that are so consistently insecure whenever people criticize this garbage in the comment sections. They'll say things like, "It's just the trailers, you can't judge the movie based on that, how about you wait for the actual movie to come out?" To which I say, fair enough, I won't judge the movie based on the trailer because I can already adequately judge the movie before it even fucking comes out. You know, I started doing this after Endgame, and guess what? I haven't been wrong since. And I'll even add, why don't you wait until you finished watching the damn trailer before calling yet another of Marvel's D-list the greatest Marvel movie ever made? Now, undoubtedly, some people are gonna say, well, that seems a bit unfair that you just make up your mind like that before even watching the movies. What if you end up being wrong? Good question. There's an answer to that too. If I end up being wrong about a Marvel movie's quality and it comes out and it turns out to actually be good, I win. That's great. Cool, I'll watch it. Why not? Why wouldn't I want to watch a good movie? But here's the thing. I highly doubt that's going to happen, because all of the evidence suggests otherwise. Like I said, one of the major reasons I'm finally dropping the MCU is because, unlike the millions of people who pretend to be, I, for one, am just not excited anymore. Why would I be? Why would I be excited to be baited into the theater with cameos and teasers just to see another dumpster fire? Now, to put it in perspective, and before people likely assume this, I'm not a hardcore DC fan. I'm actually way more invested in Marvel than I am in DC. And I'll absolutely agree the DCEU is worse than the MCU, at least for the most part. But say what you want about DC's movie releases. Since the Infinity Saga wrapped up with Endgame, DC has been on absolute fucking fire, while Marvel has just been continuously plummeting and plummeting. Think about it. If we exclude Wonder Woman 84, which is my personal pick for the worst DCEU movie released to date, and hopefully the end of Patty Jenkins' career, might I add. Aside from that, what else have we been treated to? Joker 2019 was an absolute fucking home run. The Suicide Squad and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Both were extremely well received. I can't speak for them personally because I haven't seen them, but that's the general consensus at least. But most recently, Matt Reeves' The Batman came out, and it looks to be yet another home run from DC. As a matter of fact, it was The Batman that made me come to this realization about my apathy towards the MCU. I loved making my review of The Batman. I felt passion for it, because it was a great fucking superhero movie, but most importantly, it was just a great fucking movie, tied to no cinematic universe or prequels or sequels whatsoever. It wasn't the piece of a larger whole. It was the whole fucking package. And thus, I wanted to talk about why it was great. My Black Widow video, on the other hand, was an absolute fucking chore to get through, and likely many of you do not know this. I couldn't stand talking about it. It was yet another Marvel disaster with no substance that ruined a character I loved. And on top of that, it was just completely inconsequential because it came out after Endgame when we already knew the character's fate. So I felt no passion to make that video. I'm glad a lot of you enjoyed it, but it was not a good creative process for me. And I feel much the same when I think about Doctor Strange 2. I know it's going to be another Marvel disaster. I have no desire to make a video about it, and the thought of forcing myself to go through the process of making another lengthy review for a movie I can't stand from a franchise I hold in complete apathy at this point honestly turns my stomach. So yeah, consider me way more excited for whatever DC has coming next than what Marvel does. Hell, consider me more excited for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 than anything Marvel has coming out now or in the distant future, with the exception of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Because despite my issues with Spider-Verse, that sequel sounds way more fucking interesting than anything the MCU has coming out. And finally, and I need to address something right fucking now, people can hate and joke about James Cameron's Avatar all they want. That hate bandwagon was a pile of shit ever since the internet and its vast collection of pseudo-intellectuals fucking invented it. The first Avatar was just Dances with Wolves with blue people in space. Yeah, The Last Samurai was Dances with Wolves in fucking Japan. And despite that, that movie's a fucking goddamn masterpiece. Now, just to be clear, I know that isn't the only problem people seem to have with Avatar, that the movie's plot is derivative, but it seems to be the most common and stupidly regurgitated criticism out there, and not to mention it's pretty hypocritical for that matter if the people who are spouting that are the same people who latch onto every single MCU movie. They got some nerve to call Avatar derivative. But whilst making the comparison to The Last Samurai in terms of plot alone, that's not to put Avatar on the same pedestal. Fact of the matter is, Avatar did well at the box office because it was good. It arguably did better at the box office than it probably deserved, if I'm being fair. But a bunch of people got so butthurt by that, they tried to turn James Cameron's movie and franchise into a joke by shitting all over it. Like I said, make your jokes. But I, for one, am way more excited about a sci-fi space adventure helmed by one of the most legendary directors and movie makers of all time, who spent over a decade making the next installment to his franchise on his own budget. I'm way more excited for that than the 20th something fucking installment in a franchise that pukes up B movies constantly, has oversaturated its own market to death, is helmed by the same incompetent fucking creative executives, likely won't even be its own complete movie, but yet another setup waste of time for what's coming next, and ended up being a pile of shit on its own anyway. Seriously, hate Avatar all you want. It means I'll get to watch the Avatar sequel in an empty fucking theater on the big screen all by my fucking self and likely love every fucking second of it. Like I said, MCU is a corporately produced soulless collection of predominantly garbage designed to tick boxes and make money. Avatar and its sequel is a movie on a grand sci-fi fucking scale made by one director, one author, one voice on his own budget after a decade of development and planning, as well as pioneering new technology in order to get it done. Do you guys remember the last time we got something even close to a product like that which ticks all of the boxes I just listed at that sort of scale? Here's a little hint. So yeah, you bet your ass I'm way more excited for the Avatar sequel than I am for Doctor Strange Part 2, Thor Love and Thunder, Black Panther 2, or just about anything else the MCU has on the horizon. So yeah, I'm fucking done with this garbage. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And if anything, I'm late to the party because there's a ton of people out there who had the foresight to drop off much sooner where I likely should have. So on a more personal note, for those of you subscribed to this channel who really like my content, what does this mean for the channel going forward? Well, it means I'm done indulging any new MCU content. So please, don't expect a review of Doctor Strange 2, The Multiverse of Madness. Certainly don't expect a review of Thor Love and Thunder, or any new MCU release. I refuse to contribute to the shameless theory and bait news culture that talks about Easter eggs or straight up invents them to build hype or farm views, along with the endless theory and rumor videos based on approximately jack shit in order to milk revenue and contribute to another dumb hype train for something terrible. No reaction videos either, or trailer breakdowns, because I see that as also contributing to speculation in one form or another, whether it being negative or positive for that matter. I also wanted to deviate from the hypocrisy of a lot of reviewers out there who constantly, and rightfully I might add, complain about Marvel and the MCU and its declining quality, but will also choose to continue to keep indulging it despite recognizing it's garbage because it's algorithm friendly and because it's the equivalent of critically shooting a very popular fish in a barrel for views despite the reviewers holding no real passion for it. It's just easy and it's popular, that's all. And here's my rationale. You guys know the saying, vote with your wallet, right? Well, guess what? Voting with your time as well is just as strong of a message, and that's kind of the message I want to send going forward on this channel. The most interaction I think I'll have with the MCU going forward is discussing the aftermath of certain releases on the podcast, because even though I despise what the MCU has become, I do find discussing its decline and the shifting fan base as well as the comic book movie genre and the industry rather fascinating. I'm certainly more interested in that than actually reviewing the garbage products. Despite what it's become, I do appreciate the MCU's existence for the good times, as I've had many thanks to it. But even though I won't indulge future MCU projects, that doesn't mean I'm done talking about Marvel in general. There's still plenty regarding Marvel I'd like to make videos on. And I still do want to discuss the MCU's Infinity Saga because I still have an investment in it. Whether it's adoration or despise. I got plenty of videos in mind, particularly one regarding a project from the director of the upcoming Doctor Strange movie, as a matter of fact. If there's a shred of compassion left in my body for the MCU, the only reason I don't want Doctor Strange to bomb hard is because I'm a fan of the director, and when that movie comes out and is undoubtedly terrible, the blowback should not fall on him. Sam Raimi is an excellent director and a hardcore comic book fan, but Jesus Christ himself can't save the movie that he's attached to. When Doctor Strange 2 ends up being terrible, it, like all the others, falls right on Kevin Feige for being an absolute joke of a creator, piggybacking off the talent of his betters and standing on the shoulders of giants like Whedon and Favreau, who did bring out the best of the MCU before he ran it into the ground. And regardless of what happens, I hope Sam Raimi can come out of Doctor Strange 2 clean, with reputation intact, so that Sony can finally let him move on to finish the comic book movie series he started long ago, because that's one superhero project that just might get me excited again. MCU, thanks for coming into our lives, but like any bad smell or insufferable guest who's outstayed their welcome, just go the fuck away already. Anyway guys, that brings us to the end. Thank you all for checking out this video and putting up with my angry ranting. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on the current state of the MCU in the comments below. Feel free to join my Discord if you want to chat to my community about the MCU, Marvel, comic book movies in general, and plenty of other topics as well. I've left a link in the description. Check it out at your leisure, and who knows, maybe you'll make some friends along the way. A special thank you to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members for supporting my videos and my channel. If you're interested in becoming a patron, I've left a link to Patreon in the description below, or you could also hit the join button if you'd like to become a YouTube member. A special thanks to a British Potato for helping me with the audio editing of this video. I've left a link to his channel below, please check him out, he makes great stuff. And finally, here's one last thank you for staying to the end of the video. You are a legend, and I'll see you next time.